Hi everyone, welcome back to another video. So in today's video, I'm gonna be telling you guys the seven most common mistakes for beginners. Seven most common mistakes that beginners do. Okay, so first of all, the first mistake that the beginners do is confusing the equals to, the double equal to, or the equals to with dot equals to method. So equals to is used to compare. So like for example, int a is equals to 5, int b is equals to 6. So if a equals b, then system.out.println cookie. Okay, so here we are simply using the equals to, so which is used to compare to primitive data types, like including like the integer, float, double, etc. So yeah, you can use the equals to by using the if statement, the else if statement, or yeah, anything. So it's basically used to compare two stuff or two primitive data types. So yeah, so it's not the same thing as dot equals, because as I mentioned in my previous video, dot equals is a built-in method that lets you compare two strings. So here it lets you compare. So here it basically lets you compare. It basically lets you compare the two primitive data types, but in the equals to method, it basically lets you compare two strings or any amount of strings you want. So for example, by using these equals to method, we can do string a is equals to book, and then string b is equals to l, or lollipop. Okay, and then semicolon, and then system.out.println, and then inside the parentheses of it, we have to write a dot then equals. So equals to is basically used to compare two strings. So this is the common mistake that the absolute beginners get confused with. And yeah, so like for example, instead of doing if a equals, instead the beginners, they accidentally do it a dot equals. Well, no, you shouldn't do that. And in the if statement, you can also use the dot equals for the in the if statement to compare the strings. So for example, if a dot equals, and then you can just write, oops, sorry, mistake, like this. So and also, by the way, you can write a text here, or you can also write the variable that you want to compare with. So isn't that cool, guys? So yeah, so when you talk about the equals to and with the dot equals to method, it's completely different. So yeah, so this is what the Java absolute beginners struggle with. Okay, so let's proceed to the second mistake that the Java absolute beginners do. So they forget semicolons. Forgetting semicolons. So basically, and the semicolon in Java is used to mark the end of a statement. So if you do it like this, string a is equals to I don't know, t, like this, and then if you write it like this, it's gonna give you an error because it's gonna say insert semicolon. It's gonna give you a syntax error. So it's obligatory to put this semicolon in the end of every statement. So this is also another common mistake. So if you don't do this and then simply just print system.out.println a like this without the semicolon 2, then it's gonna give you a bunch of errors, a whole bunch of errors. Look, syntax error, and then also another syntax error on the system.out.println. So yeah, it's basically used to mark the end of a statement. So to mark the end of the statement of the T, and like we don't want to continue more, then we simply have to write the semicolon. Just like that. It's just a symbol that you have to write to mark the end of any statement. Okay, so let's proceed to the third mistake. Incorrect brackets usage. So what does that mean? Well, basically incorrect bracket usage means that system, like if you write system.out.println, so instead of putting semicolon, you instead put the curly braces, which is wrong, because curly braces is used for the conditions, or like for the if statement, the while loop, the do while loop, and etc. But in like for the normal mark of the end of the statements, you have to use the semicolon. But for the rest of it, like the if statement is equals to be like that, you have to write curly braces. And if you write semicolon, it's gonna give you a whole another answer, or it's gonna give you an error. So that's the reason. That's the reason that you should always put the semicolon here in every statement. But if you are using if statement, whether do while loop, if statement, for loop, and etc., then you have to write curly braces. It's obligatory. Okay. Okay, let's proceed to the fourth mistake. Not initializing variables. So what does that mean? Well, initializing basically means that you're setting a variable into something. So int a is equals to something. So if you don't do that and you just write int a like this and then system.out.println a, it's gonna give you an error. The local variable a may not have been initialized. So you have to always initialize something before printing it out, because Java won't print anything out. So Java won't print anything out if you just declare it. But you can use declaration, but you also have to initialize it after, because after every time you write a variable or like a data type with the variable, you have to always initialize it. Or you can simply just do it like this, int a and then semicolon and then a is equals to 5, just like that, and then it's gonna work. So you can either do int a and then you can either do declare and then after in the end do the initialization, or you can either do it just directly, int a is equals to 5, just directly, and voila, it's just working. So this is also another very common mistake, not initializing the variables. Okay, let's proceed to the fifth question. Mixing up assignment and equality operators. So what does this mean? Well, assignment operator. So the assignment operator is the equals. So any assignment operator. So for example, equals to. So equals to. So like for example, not mixing up assignment and equality operator. So let's replace mixing up equals to assignment operator with the equality operator. So with the equality, so the assignment equal operator is basically used to initialize something, or like to set something into something. Like for example, if you write int the data type a, so you have to write it the equal to, so that Java can know that you are setting this variable, or you are just putting like this variable into like something, or like into an integer. So you're just basically initializing it. And the difference between a is equals to, yeah, so I've already told you the difference of the equals to assignment operator, and now I'm gonna showing you the equals the equality operator. So the equals equals. So equals equals is basically used to compare. So as I mentioned here, equals equals, and then with the dot equals. So this is a method, and this is the equals equals. But here it's an assignment operator that is basically used to initialize something, initialize something. But here it is used to compare two things, a or b, variable a or b. So if you initialize them, then you would be able to compare. But if you don't initialize them, like for example int a and then int b, and then if a is equal to 5, then system data.println cookie. So look, it's giving you an error because the local variable may not have been initialized. So you have to always also initialize the variable, and yeah, that was the difference between the between the equals to assignment operator and the equality, the equal operator. Okay, so let's proceed. Let's move on to the mistake. The sixth mistake, which is not understanding loops. So what this basically means is that for loop, so you like the beginner, like the absolute beginner, he's basically just getting confused. Like he cannot understand what loop do I have to use when. Like he can't understand. So for loop, when do I use it? Or he can't understand what the for loop is, or he can't understand what the while loop is and when do we use it. And yeah, so for loop is you can just put a lot of statements inside it, and then but you have to separate them by a semicolon. And also they get confused, or they cannot understand that if you they always have to put the incrementation after it, or else it will end up being an infinite loop. So for instance, like this, and then a plus plus. So for example, in the for loop, you always have to write first the variable and then the condition and then the incrementation. But in the while loop, it's way more different. So in the while loop, basically, you have to write while like this, and then you have to write the condition inside it. So like for example, int a is equals to 5. So while a is equals to 5, then system.out.println while a equals 5, then system.out.println cookie. So as you can see here, in the for loop, we have to write the incrementation, but in the while loop, even if you don't write the incrementation, so it's gonna end up printing infinity, a lot of like cookie till infinity. But in the for loop, you can't do that. It's necessary to put the incrementation, or else it won't work. Yeah, like the for loop, it's basically used to come incrementation for the incrementation, and while loop it's for the condition, and you can also increment, but it's your choice if you don't want to increment or not, because if you don't increment, then it's gonna give you it's gonna end up so it's gonna end up like printing all like a cookie, or the statement that you wanted to execute till infinity. So you don't want to do that, right? So yeah, so that's why. So this is so this is what it means, like the not understanding loops. So he basically gets confused with beginner. Okay, so let's proceed, or let's go with the seventh mistake, which is the confusing the main method signature. So what is the main method signature? Well, basically it's the beginning. So in the beginning, probably like a user, Yeah, so in the beginning they probably like get confused. Like they get confused. What is that? So they get confused about the public static void main string argument. So instead of writing it like this, public static void main parenthesis string and then the square brackets arguments, instead they write like this: public static void main string args, and then like this. Or maybe they added some semicolons. So which is absolutely like a whole big mistake because you have to write it correctly. And also, to avoid this error, there's a shortcut that you can use in VS Code. So what you can simply do is you can simply write main, and then it will appear like this, and then just press enter. It's gonna basically write the public static void main automatically for you. So you don't have to worry about that mistake anymore. And then, yeah. So instead of just keep writing like public static void main like that, man, like that literally takes forever, right? So in VS Code you can basically use main, which is basically a shortcut, and yeah, you will never ever be receiving this error anymore, and it will no longer be confusing the main method signature, which is the public static void main string arguments. Okay, and yeah guys, that was it for my video. So make sure to like, share and subscribe, and don't forget to turn on the notification bell too, so that you won't miss out any of my videos. And yeah guys, have a nice day. Bye.